Hello everyone. How are you? I hope you are healthy and happy. This time, we will talk about Mitsubishi Zero. Be sure to watch until the end so that you don't miss any interesting facts about this amazing airplane. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero was one of the most significant adversaries faced by Allied forces during the Pacific War. Designed in the 1930s for the Imperial Japanese Navy, IJN, the A6M Zero was created as a long-range fighter capable of outperforming its enemies and escorting Japanese bombers on extended missions to China. Its revolutionary assembly process resulted in an extremely lightweight and agile fighter. During World War I, the Zero's unmatched agility made it a fearsome opponent, forcing Allied aircrews to develop new tactics to counter its capabilities. The origins of the Zero trace back to 1937, when the IJN sought to replace the Mitsubishi A5M. Although the A5M had just entered service that year, Japan was eager to advance its fighter capabilities based on the experience of pilots flying combat missions over China. In October 1937, the IJN issued specifications for a new fighter that would climb quickly, reach speeds of at least 310 miles per hour, and feature extended endurance. They envisioned an aircraft that could remain airborne for 2 hours under normal conditions, or up to 6 to 8 hours with drop tanks for economical flight. The task of designing the new fighter was assigned to Jiro Horikoshi, with production handled by the Mitsubishi Aircraft Company. Horikoshi prioritized lightweight construction, paying meticulous attention to detail. To reduce weight, plywood was used instead of aluminum for reinforcing parts of the frame. Unlike conventional aircraft built in stages, Horikoshi's design integrated the wings directly into the fuselage. The fuselage itself was crafted from extra super duralumin, a lightweight alloy developed secretly by Sumitomo Metals Industries in 1936. Further weight-saving measures included positioning the engine closer to the cockpit and omitting cockpit armor entirely. The aircraft made its maiden flight in December 1939, exceeding expectations and meeting or surpassing its design requirements. Even after successful testing, improvements were continually made, including versions with folding wings for aircraft carrier operations. The A6M Zero proved highly capable, climbing to 30,000 feet in just 7 minutes. It was armed with 2 fuselage-mounted Type 97 machine guns and 2 wing-mounted Type 99 cannons, providing both firepower and flexibility in combat. The Zero was officially named the Type Zero in 1940, coinciding with the Imperial Japanese year 2600, and was designated the A6M Risen. Japanese pilots nicknamed it Zero-sen, derived from sentoki, meaning fighter or warplane. Allied forces later codenamed it Zeke, following their convention of assigning male names to Japanese fighters and female names to bombers. A total of over 10,000 Zeros were produced before the war's end in 1945. While its early dominance was undermined by advancements in Allied aircraft and tactics, the Zero remains an iconic symbol of Japanese aviation and ingenuity during World War I. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero made its combat debut in 1940 during the Japanese invasion of China, playing a pivotal role in securing air superiority for the Japanese Navy. Its agility and advanced design allowed it to dominate in the skies, helping Japan achieve significant territorial gains. Most famously, the Zero took part in the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Approximately 125 Zero fighters, launched from 3 aircraft carriers, participated in the assault. During the 2-hour attack, the Zero squadrons effectively decimated American air power over Oahu, significantly crippling the U.S. Navy. Remarkably, only 9 Zeros were lost during the operation. However, the attack on Pearl Harbor drew the United States into the war, setting the stage for a prolonged and devastating conflict. U.S. military pilots, initially using aircraft such as the Curtiss P-40 and Seversky P-35, soon found themselves outclassed by the faster, more agile Zero. In the early stages of the war, the Zero was considered a fearsome adversary. When flown by skilled pilots, it often outmaneuvered Allied aircraft, and American pilots were initially hesitant to engage without an altitude or a speed advantage. A common tactic employed by U.S. pilots was the boom and zoom maneuver. Pilots would dive on a Zero formation to strafe and attack, then pull away rapidly to avoid prolonged dogfights. This hit-and-run strategy helped mitigate the Zero's superior maneuverability. As the war progressed, American forces began studying the Zero's strengths and weaknesses during engagements. The Flying Tigers, a group of American volunteer pilots in China, played a critical role in analyzing the Zero's combat tactics. Commander Claire Chennault of the Flying Tigers noted that the Zero's lack of armor and its lightweight structure left it vulnerable in certain situations. He emphasized using the sturdier P-40 Warhawk's superior diving speed and firepower to attack Zeros from above or below, where their defenses were weakest. Another innovative counter tactic, the Thatch Weave, was developed by U.S. Navy pilot Lieutenant Commander John S. Thatch. In this maneuver, two American fighters flew parallel and 200 feet apart. If a Zero pursued one, the two planes would weave towards each other in a horseshoe pattern, allowing the unengaged fighter to fire on the pursuing Zero. The Zero's lack of armor, initially an asset for agility, became a significant liability as Allied pilots adapted their tactics. From 1943 onwards, the Allies exploited these weaknesses, and Japan began losing its pool of experienced pilots, further eroding the Zero's effectiveness. Concurrently, the United States introduced advanced fighter aircraft, such as the Grumman F-6F Hellcat and Vought F-4U Corsair, which were designed to endure the harsh Pacific conditions and offered better pilot protection. These aircraft outperformed the Zero in speed, durability, and firepower. Japan attempted to counter its mounting losses by introducing modifications to the Zero, including thicker armor and sealed fuel tanks. However, these changes reduced its speed and agility, diminishing the aircraft's once dominant performance. The decisive Battle of Midway in 1942 marked a turning point for the Zero. The Japanese Navy suffered catastrophic losses of aircraft carriers and planes, severely depleting its Zero squadrons. The damage was so severe that Japan struggled to recover its air power for the remainder of the war. As Japan faced increasing setbacks, the Zero was repurposed for Kamikaze missions in October 1944. These suicide attacks, carried out by young, often inexperienced pilots, targeted Allied naval vessels. The Zero, loaded with explosives, became a weapon of desperation in Japan's efforts to halt Allied advances. Despite its eventual decline, the Mitsubishi A6M Zero remains an iconic symbol of Japanese aviation during World War I. Its early dominance and the tactical adjustments it forced upon Allied forces underscore its historical significance as one of the most notable aircraft of the Pacific theater. The Zero was used extensively in such attacks by the Divine Wind Special Attack Unit, which carried out Kamikaze missions, and while they had a low success rate, two Kamikaze pilots flying Zero aircraft caused extensive damage to the U.S. Bunker Hill aircraft carrier in May 1945. These attacks have been described by history as one of the more disturbing methods used during the war. Towards the end of the war, Japan continued to modify the Zero with the Model 63 Zero, released in May 1945, which featured a more powerful engine. The IGN also experimented with the Zero Model 64, built with the even more powerful Mitsubishi Kinsei engine and a modified fuel tank for longer-range attacks. While the IGN ordered over 6,000 of the Model 64s, mass production was never fully completed due to the atomic bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, followed by the end of the war. The Zero remains an enduring image of the war in the Pacific and is sometimes associated with the dangerous conditions encountered by all forces fighting in the region. Whilst excellent in terms of flight characteristics, the Zero was regarded as a significant opponent to Allied and American pilots at the time of America's entrance into the Second World War. It played a key role in American pilots having to adapt to different air tactics in order to gain superiority and defeat devastating attacks by the Zero against Allied forces. Although the Zero had an innovative design at the start of the war and remained in service until the end, it began to technologically lag behind the development of rival American fighter planes as the war continued, and as a result, Japan's air superiority was weakened. A number of Zero models survived the war, but in varying conditions. Some Zero aircraft were restored for display but had to use surviving parts from other aircraft or new components built from scratch. One example of a flying Zero was used in the production of the 2001 film Pearl Harbor.